Welcome to day 5 of our object-oriented programming journey. Today, we will dive into static members, understanding how static variables and methods work in OOP and when to use them. Let's start by defining what static members are. In object-oriented programming, static members are variables or methods that belong to the class itself, rather than to individual instances of the class. This means that you can access them directly from the class without creating an object. First, let's talk about static variables. Unlike regular instant variables, static variables are shared across all instances of a class. They retain their value between method calls and can be accessed without creating an object. For example, consider a class that tracks how many objects have been created. The static variable will keep count of all objects created from that class. Now let's move on to the static methods. Static methods can be called directly on the class without the need for an instance. However, they can only access other static members of the class. Static methods are often used for utility functions that do not depend on object-specific data. So, when should you use static members? Static members are useful when you need to track data shared across all instances of a class. For instance, if you need to count the number of objects created, or if you have utility functions that don't depend on the object's state. Let's look at a practical example. Imagine you have a counter class. You want to track how many times a method is called. By using a static variable to store the count and a static method to retrieve it, you can easily achieve this. Static members offer several benefits. They optimize memory usage because the variable is shared across all instances. They also allow for utility methods or data that are common to all objects. For example, tracking the total number of created objects. Now it's time for an exercise. Create a counter class with a static variable that tracks how many times a specific method is called. Implement a static method to retrieve the count and test it by printing the result after multiple method calls. In conclusion, static methods are powerful tools in OOP. They belong to the class rather than individual instances and can help manage shared data or functionality. Static variables are shared across instances, while static methods can be used without creating an object. Use static members when you need shared data or behavior across all instances of a class. Before we end today's lesson, here's a motivational quote. Success is a sum of small efforts repeated day in and day out. Keep practicing and you will continue making progress.